Well, what we have here is tonight's conversation where everybody go to give terrible advice. Terrible advice. And I'm not sure why people would go here for advice. A lot of them are not married, got some weird backgrounds and stuff like that, and some of their takes are just out of this world. But it calls for some viral moments, and they make a lot of money. They tour the whole country, and a lot of people get to see them. And as you can tell by the audience, it's probably like 90% women, and then there's a couple of couples that might come together for whatever reason you would want to go to this type of podcast together. But we're gonna review this little snippet or clip from their longer form, and we're gonna try to understand what are they trying to say and if it really makes sense, because I think some of these people come up here really trying to get a good advice, or from what I'm seeing, a lot of people go up there to, lay out their dirty laundry or whatever the case. So either way, we're gonna go over it and see if the advice is actually relevant or is it something that should be overlooked. Because I think besides Kitty and I forget the light skinned dude's name, they pretty much the only people that give pretty decent commentary. Everybody else seems very clickbaitish, and Melissa Ford, come on, like, she hates men. How the world she's gonna give relationship advice? But let's take a look.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hey, girl. Kitty, I love you.
Aw.
So, what do you think is more damaging in a relationship? Saying too much in the heat of the moment or saying nothing at all?
Which one is more damaging? Too
Yes.
much in the heat of the moment.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're because you're impulsive, and so your logic mind doesn't resonate whenever there's something that's emotionally evoking or emotionally heightened in that moment. When you're emotionally charged, you can say some of the most hurtful things to get under somebody's skin, and you don't reason. You just say what you can get out to make them comply in some type of form. So that's a lot worse than actually holding off and waiting to say something, or simply just suppressing the thought.
Context. When you say
Now you see, she gave a pretty grounded response. She typically does. A lot of her responses be romanticized, and that's fine. It works for the clickbait commentary they're looking for. But a lot of times, Kitty gives a pretty good breakdown of it, even better than the men, surprisingly. And that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But now let's watch what Ace Metaphor gonna say, because he's terrible at this. He know how to pander to the ladies, but he is terrible at this.
something out of anger, right? Okay, I can. We're just gonna say you're angry, so you decided to tell the truth, correct? As a
Right.
context.
Yeah.
So would you rather somebody tell the truth being angry or not say nothing at all and never tell you their issues?
Absolutely not. I want you to handle me with kid gloves when you're angry. Here's what I used to tell a boyfriend of mine who was, sorry, my ex fiance, who was. All right, I'm just gonna leave alone all those adjectives that I was going to use. I would say to him, please remember that you love me when you're angry. Because he seemed to forget. And I thought that, I was like, it's too hard to keep forgiving you after all of the
Now this is
indiscretions,
Melissa
after
Ford,
all of the anger,
and
after.
we understand that we can tell that she's not gonna be a warm place to be at, for lack of a better way to say it. She is not a place where your emotions is gonna be hurt at all. To say you want to get handled with kid gloves even when you're angry, to me sounds like somebody that is emotionally immature because you should be able to deal with somebody's anger within reason without it seeming so dire against your soul and how you feel about things. Because the second that the roles is reversed, she's gonna say, well, my anger ain't just anger, it's a level of passion behind it, and we have to deal with it as men. And I call cap on that. If I have to get angry in a way that fits you, then you have to reciprocate that same thing. And we all know when you're a feminist like her, you're definitely not going to be a moniker of diplomatic when it's time for a disagreement. And it's probably the reason why she's single right now.
Or all of the usage of such, verbally abusive language, it just got too hard to forgive. So I would definitely err on the side of caution, keep my mouth closed until I could, use reason and logic and thought and speak to you from a place of love, even though I am angry with you.
I would say it kind of goes, I agree with that point as well. You have to have kindness and conflict, but I think that it kind of goes with whatever that person can't stomach based on their own childhood wounds, right? Because you have some people that explosion is their communication.
Yeah.
You say F you, he say F you back, and the day can continue on. But if their childhood trauma had them being ignored and neglected, you retreating and walking away and abandoning them might do more.
The childhood trauma thing. I'll be as relevant. I am not a proponent of this therapy culture we're in because it's allowing people outs for way too many things. And a lot, especially the ladies, they are the biggest consumer of therapy culture, and it's not even a close second. It's almost to the point where they want you to be in therapy, even though you got a strong friend group, a strong nucleus of people that you don't necessarily always need to go use your insurance and spend your money in order to talk to people. Some people are using these therapists as literally like their best friend. I can't wait to see my therapist so I can tell them about my day. And it's cha-ching, another one. Another card swipe and a little bit more money that the people have to pay. I think we need to develop a capacity as a people, especially the ladies, so that they can deal with more things and not have to always fall back on the therapy culture because it is literally killing modern relationships as we see it. Because for me, this ain't necessarily about childhood trauma, but this is more about being able to dish what you don't dish what you can't take. So if I don't want a lashing out type of anger situation, then I bet not do it to that person, and vice versa. And what we see a lot of times is that the ladies, when they cast a stone, when it's time for that same type of stone to be cast back at them, they can't handle it. But we're gonna let them continue.
Seen probably a lot more relationships die in silence than from arguments. And I feel like when we talk about trusting our partner, one of the things that gets overlooked is I got to be able to trust you in your chaos. You know what I'm saying? I got to be able to know that when you go to that space, there's certain regions of an argument that's not going to come up. Yeah, get your shit off, get your yell out, do whatever you got to do. But if I really trust the authenticity of this connection, I know with certain parameters you're not going to cross. It's been moments with me and my wife where the amicable expression wasn't going to be the one that was going to crack the code. You know what I'm saying? You have certain things that y'all talk about to y'all blue in the face, and it's way 21 after the first 20 ways that you try to be nice about it, where she had to yell at me, where she had to get her shit off in a way where now the light bulb went off over my head. I got to trust her to be able to do that because it's not always going to be the amicable expression that works.
I appreciate your question. Thank
Let's be real. Most of the time, if it took 20 times before you finally did what she wanted you to do, and you didn't feel the need to try to correct that, she was probably talking some silly shit. And the fact that she showed such a level of aggression and anger, you said, finally, I'll give in anything to stop this onslaught of bullshit I'm hearing right now. Or, depending on your personality, you might retreat, go do something else, go to the bar with the boys, go do whatever, floats your boat. Anything but listen to what the hell she got going on right there. So, I mean, we need a little more context. If you're going to talk about certain things that goes on relationships, if she had to tell you something 20 times, maybe it would be a good idea to give us an example so we ain't grasping for straws or whatever the case may be, because some of these people, I wonder what are they getting paid to do, because this is not great advice. When they had Avanya Van Lance or whatever her damn name is, and they had the Trip up there. At least they had some people with some balance. I would love to see a panel with Kitty and Trip and Avanya and not none of these other ones. I mean, I know it's Ace's baby, at least the platform, but he gives the worst commentary, in my opinion.
Learn. That's it. Sometimes loss is the greatest lesson, and that's what helps you grow. We don't grow when it's all, cherries and sunshine and rainbows and stuff. We grow through, catastrophe. We grow through, through difficulty. That's what we grow through, and sometimes it's loss that is the greatest lesson. So.
And I feel like, as a counselor, I've seen probably a lot more relationships die in silence than from arguments. And I feel like when we talk about trusting our partner, one of the things that gets overlooked is I got to be able to trust you in your chaos. You know what I'm saying? I got to be able to know that when you go to that space, there's certain regions of an argument that's not going to come up. Yeah, get your shit off, get your yell out, do whatever you got to do. But if I really trust the authenticity of this connection, I know with certain parameters you're not going to cross. It's been moments with me and my wife where the amicable expression wasn't going to be the one that was going to crack the code. You know what I'm saying? You have certain things that y'all talk about to y'all blue in the face, and it's way 21 after the first 20 ways that you try to be nice about it, where she had to yell at me, where she had to get her shit off in a way where now the light bulb went off over my head. I got to trust her to be able to do that because it's not always going to be the amicable expression that works.
See, what we can't do is just let them get away with stuff like that. Because anytime it's on the male side of the fence and you're raising your voice or you're getting like what the women like to call passionate, we don't necessarily get that same grace. So, no, so, if I can't yell, you can't yell. You know, uh, that should be well understood because you got to think a lot of times when you're having these discussions, they are getting so passionate about some of the most smallest things. It it becomes highlighted when they get the yelling and stuff. So no, don't yell at me to try to get a point across, even if you feel like I'm not getting it, because if the shoe's on the other foot, you're gonna call that a form of aggression. So we got to be able to call this thing both ways. I think gone are the days where we give women the grace of being more emotional because it's all the whole equality thing. So I get what Homeboy was saying, and to a degree, I do agree with what he's saying. I just think that we got to hold these things accountable if we want to come to a common ground in these relationships.
I appreciate your question. Thanks. Go ahead. Can I get a question to the mic? Mike.
You know, it's funny. A family member called me about arguing with a person, and I realized that over the last decade, I probably argue with women like maybe a dozen times in 10 years. and I really don't subscribe to the argument package when I engage with people and interact with people. But I think it's so common that you could actually be in a relationship with somebody that you claim you like, and y'all probably do that argument thing like maybe 3 to 5 times a week, and it just it boggles my mind. I think marriage and relationships are totally different, and the longer we keep blending these things in, we're really just having the suffering package. And a lot of people got that suffer that comes with their relationship, because even argument is not the way to solve a disagreement in a relationship. It's not the status quo. It's really, we both got a bunch of shit that we are frustrated with that's probably not even presenting in what's real time. We're just ultimately fed up. But the narrative is always, argument is normal, discomfort, it happens in seasons, and I just don't subscribe to that, because I believe I only enjoy a relationship as long as it's peaceful. And if the peace goes, so do I. We got about three of them conversations where you want to call me an MF and I want to call you a B.
Love is war, though.
No, but I don't subscribe to that.
There has to be a juxtaposition. If we're talking about
Don't you love how these people that I assume that are not in relationships have all the answers about what they do, what they don't do, what they put up with, and they don't have the track record, but, a bunch of failed relationships. So, sometimes you got to come to things humbly, and I don't think that happens enough in these conversations. I think tonight's conversation is like a big conference of people with delusional expectations and a bunch of clickbait words. Because think about it, she just said a marriage is war. Now, they love to bring up the scriptures in this and all that jazz, but where anywhere in the scriptures it says anything about marriage being a war. If anything, it's a war because the ladies are so low on the emotional control level. They're not, most of them don't try to control their emotions. They call emotional intelligence as being able for a guy to be able to handle their emotions. That's emotional intelligence to them. And that is completely not what it is. Emotional intelligence is being able to control your emotions and not being able to be controlled by them. Point blank, period. If I get angry and I can control how I express it, that's emotional intelligence. If I get sad, I control how I express it. So when you get emotional and you act on those emotions in a hyperbolic way, then I don't have high emotional intelligence because I am now allowing this emotional response to come out in a negative way. And these people ain't hitting the nail on the head when it comes to these things because they're not really here to help people. And I mean, maybe they are, but it's more about can we pack this house and get enough clickbait situations that we can double the monetization on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and etc.
Stuff in the garage. They give you them lockers at these jobs because they don't want you to bring that home. And if we're going to have one of those relationships that stand the test of time, ultimately it would be because we allow ourselves the time and the space to be with people that we actually agree with spiritually. So that way, when even in our seasons of discomfort, they don't look like war. They don't look like violence. They don't look like harm. It looks like a spirit of discussion that allows us to improve.
Okay.
But again, those are things that are reserved for people that you've qualified enough to put you in the position to be discomfortable.
Okay. She said out of anger. She did not say that anger was disrespectful. She didn't, because if you shut down a person's ability to communicate while they're angry, that person may not even be angry at you. And so like it just is a space. And I'll say this: sometimes I can only speak for myself. I've chose peace over a partner. And what I mean by peace, though, I mean peace with the peace, right? Peace meant for me staying in my box or my comfort zone or choosing or picking and choosing what I wanted to hear, right? And sometimes I wish, out to your point, that we were able to have that tough argument or disagreement, because then we would have been able to unearth things that we can't unearth when we're in our right minds, because
Right.
we both avoid to saying things that are important to the relationship.
Yeah, and in alignment with what you just said.
If you find yourself in a situation where you're getting in arguments with your significant other and it's not about them, you're dealing with somebody that can't take the self centeredness out of it, if for lack of a better way to say that, or I like to say semi narcissistic tendencies, which most ladies have, unfortunately for the ladies. And sometimes it's odd. I mean, as you grow up as a guy in a relationship and you start to realize that, and the first thing you do is you learn to pick and choose what you tell your significant other, because either it can turn into an argument. They give a very, very absolute solution to things. Oh, well, if you don't like what Jeff said or how he came across, maybe you should go to HR about it. And you look at him like, that is a terrible idea. I'm just getting this off my chest, so I won't say nothing crazy to Jeff when we go back to work the next day. So this is a very common thing, and if you're not aware of it, you can be, running your head into the brick wall until you realize, like, ah, man, I gotta pick and choose what I tell this lady. Or if you're one of the lucky ones that you can get one that will just sit there and listen, maybe give you a couple of tidbits, give you a hug and say, hey, everything's gonna be okay. But typically you don't get that from the ladies. I mean, and that's, you know, it's a part of the game at this point, but American women are very, very self-centered. And when it comes to the princess culture, it starts at a young age. And all the girl dads know what I'm talking about. And a lot of us work very hard to try to change those things and the accountability aspects at a young age, because the last thing you want is your daughter to be your little princess all her life. She get her little boyfriend in college, and she does something wrong, and he says, "Hey, why did you do this to me? I deserve an apology." And she goes ballistic because how dare you? I am the little princess. I don't do anything wrong. And now he has a 2-day argument about convincing her that A equaled B, and this is how we got to C. Everybody know what I'm talking about if you've been in those in any situation with a lady. So
That, oh, this ain't even my shit. A large portion of this is not even about me. And she was yelling pretty much through me to all the people in her life she never got the chance to get her shit off too. And after the conversation, we settled down, she got her shit out. She was able to tell me, Doc, you know how much I've struggled with conflict and being able to speak up for myself. At a certain point, I didn't even see you no more. I blacked the fuck out. So part of male leadership, I'm with you, Mike. I don't feel like it should be an all the time thing. But when you give that leeway to your partner to, in those moments, sometimes be able to do that, a lot of times it heals parts of them that you don't even know about, that you never had anything to do with.
Clap it up, clap it up.
well, there's two ways this thing can manifest itself. I don't think any guy has a problem with, their old lady coming home and venting about something. But it's different when they have a bad day and nothing that you say can help it, nothing that you can say can fix it. And that attitude comes from another source, right? So you didn't do nothing to her. You're trying to fix it, and it's annoying her. And it's a pseudo way of them using you as the proverbial punching bag. And every guy know what I'm talking about. Not every guy. Some guys may have dealt with it in certain situations, but I know I have. And you have a bad day at work, so now that energy has to go somewhere. And I mean, it can be anything. They can come home and be like, "Oh, your socks are on the floor," blah 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 blah, and you're like, "Yo, yo bonnet on the floor over there, but you mad about my socks, right?" And as you mature, you realize like, "Ah, man, she had a bad day at work, so now I got to be the the recipient of, you know, her getting it off." Emotional intelligence would be her being able to get it off in a more healthy way that her significant other is not feeling like they're the punching bag. And I swear, this is the hardest thing to get. There's a lot of things that's hard to get across with the ladies, but it's one of the hardest things to get across to them, man. Because I mean, it's a thin line between anger and passionate, and they will interchange the two. When you're passionate about something, it will be angry. When they're angry about something, it will be passionate. You know? So you use a different word to minimalize what you're doing, but when I do the same thing, it's anger or whatever the case may be. So I plan on doing a lot more of these and giving my perspective because I do have a lot of relationship experience, and all of them ain't turned out well, but at the same time, I hope people can learn from the knowledge that I have obtained and start to see the forest through the trees a little bit with who you choose to date, because I think when it comes down to that, that's a lot of most men problems, is that we're choosing attributes that don't necessarily constitute in a long-term situation. And tonight's conversation has all the red flags that it's great learning experiences, especially for us brothers that want to decide to date American black women. But until next time, folks, take care.